What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. This past week, I had the pleasure of going to Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay for the very first time in my life, and I have to say, that park was absolutely beautiful. There's so many amazing things about that park, and if I were to make a park review, I would probably just be saying how great it is the entire duration of it. The park has the most beautiful atmosphere I've ever seen in an amusement park. The park has amazing food and a lot of diverse food options, and of course, it has one of the best coaster collections in the United States. If you want a coaster that does this, chances are that this park has it. So as someone who got to ride all of the operating coasters at this park, I decided to do a list of the top 9 coasters at Busch Gardens Tampa. If Iron Gwasi was open, this would obviously be a top 10. And yes, that is of course the elephant in the room, and I will talk about where that coaster would land on the list later, but this is overall a list of the rides that I personally have ridden, and as of April of 2021, Iron Gwasi has not opened yet. So let's get into the list of the top 9 coasters I've gotten to ride at Busch Gardens Tampa in Tampa, Florida. Coming at the number 9 spot is of course Air Grover, the kiddie coaster at the park, and this is pretty self-explanatory. Now, this coaster really didn't provide anything for me as an enthusiast, but it isn't supposed to. I almost feel bad for putting it at the worst spot, but once again, as an 18-year-old enthusiast, this wasn't built for me. Number 8 is Sand Serpent, the wild mouse at the park, and I have to say, even for wild mouse standards, I was pretty disappointed over this ride. Riding other ride models that are similar like Ricochet at Carowinds and Apple's Apple at King's Dominion, you can easily tell that this is a much less forceful model. The turns didn't provide any great laterals, and it honestly felt a little uncomfortable. Now, I have ridden some very powerful wild mice coasters, like Exterminator at Kennywood and Twist and Shout at Family Kingdom in Myrtle Beach, and I have to say this was not one of them. And compared to the amazing themed coasters at this park, this ride barely had any theming whatsoever. It's just there to provide a good family experience, but at the same time, I really don't see why a ride like this is here when you have other family coasters that I'll mention later on this list. Coming in at the number 7 spot, we have the Schwarzkopf looping coaster Scorpion. Now I have to say, this ride honestly kind of disappointed me too. This was my first ever Schwarzkopf credit, and I have to say I was expecting a really good, smooth, and forceful ride, but instead I got a decent, rough transition ride. That transition right after the vertical loop is pretty painful, especially if you're sitting near the back, and the rest of the ride just seems a little awkward. This ride doesn't provide much. I bet the major Schwarzkopf loopers, like American Dryer Looping and the Mindbenders, provide some pretty good experiences. But Scorpion isn't meant to be that extreme thrill coaster. It seems like an entry-level thrill that provides a good first inversion. Overall, this ride was still a disappointment. I've heard that those circular loops are extremely forceful, but I didn't find it to be that much more forceful than some of the clothloid loops that I've experienced. This ride really doesn't hold that much of a space in the park, and I really don't see how it still owns a spot in Pantopia, but oh well, it still provides a unique experience to this park, so I'll let it slide for now. At the number 6 spot, we have Tigris, the premier ride Skyrocket 2 at the park in between Shikra and Kumba. I have to say that this ride actually disappointed me as well. This ride is a multi-launch coaster that goes up into several elements, and I have to say that this clone did not live up to the hype. And my one and only problem really was the trains. A lot of people would point fingers to the comfort collars, but to be completely honest, this might have to do with my short height as well, I did not see any problems with those collars. My main problem were the exact train models. These trains had very high walls, so when you experienced lateral forces, your arms would smash into them, just like that non-inverting loop after that inversion. The ride wasn't as pleasant as I thought it would be, and to be completely honest, the ride experience was forgettable. I would still say that Skyrocket at Kennywood is much better. You know, I have to say, it is a little weird because there is definitely a line that divides those coasters and the upcoming coasters. The coasters I mentioned were definitely disappointing, but every coaster from now on actually exceeded my expectations. In the number 5 spot, leading off the top 5, is Cobra's Curse, the mock spinning coaster in the Egypt section of the park. Yes, rides like Tigris and Scorpion are definitely a lot more thrilling than Cobra's Curse, but I have to say, Cobra's Curse is the perfect family coaster. For a park with the level of theming that Busch Gardens Tampa has, This coaster exceeds the level of theming. This is probably the most themed coaster at the park, and you can tell that they did a lot of effort into putting a good story and theme with this ride. You go up this elevator lift, and you face this massive Cobra. It's absolutely incredible. Coming in at the number 4 spot, we have the one and only Cobra, probably one of the most famous coasters out of this park. This is the 93 B&M sit-down coaster that is extremely historic. This ride was B&M's first real major coaster that lives up to this day. This ride has a serious cult following, and I could definitely see why. This ride is super intense through and through, and gives off some of the best forces I've ever experienced on a B&M. Starting off that first loop, I grayed out every time I went on that first loop. In the front row and the back row, it didn't matter. I was definitely experiencing one heck of a gray out. And following that dive loop is incredible. The world famous hell roll really pushes you into your seat, and the rest of the layout provides a pretty nice experience and a very low to the ground experience as well. Something I love about the B&Ms at this park is that it interacts with the terrain, unlike some of the other B&Ms at other parks. You have a lot of nice trenches on this ride, and you even have a tunnel near the end that goes under the brake run. It's a seriously incredibly themed ride with an incredible setting, and a ride that's almost 30 years old really still lives up to this day. It seems a lot newer than 1993, I could tell you that. Coming in at the number 3 spot, this might be a pretty controversial opinion, but it is Shikra, the B&M dive coaster at the park. Yes, I actually put Shikra over Cobra, and let me tell you why. Cobra really surprised me with the forces, and Cobra might honestly be a better overall ride than Shikra, but the expectations that Shikra broke for me absolutely exceeded what I had. Let me tell you why. A lot of people talk about how the new vest restraints on B&M dives really ruin the experience, and I said that might have been a little bit of an exaggeration. Before Shikra, the only B&M dive I experienced was Valraven at Cedar Point, a roller coaster infamously known for their very tight modern vest restraints. I like Valraven, I think it's a pretty decent ride, and I wasn't expecting that much of a difference with Shikra, with the old B&M restraints. But let me tell you, one back row ride on Shikra completely changed my mind. That first drop absolutely blew my mind. It was probably one of the biggest surprises I've ever had on a roller coaster. On Valraven, you kind of just stay there in that same position, but on Shikra, you go out of your seat. I remember when that dive kicked in, I was out of my seat for at least 4 seconds until my butt finally slammed into the bottom of the seat at the bottom of that first drop. And the situation was the same for that second drop too. This ride also has a much better environment, much better theming, and one of my favorite settings for any roller coaster ever. I might do a review on this ride just because it really exceeded my expectations that much. Shikra is one incredible ride and is definitely slept on compared to some other rides at the park. But we are getting into the top 2, and let me say these two are extremely comparable, and these two are extremely close on my rankings. For a little bit of the time, I liked number 2 more than number 1, but at the end of the day, I decided that number 1 was just a much more enjoyable ride. But for the number 2 spot, I picked Montu, the B&M invert at the park. Man, when I say this ride beat my expectations, it really did. Maybe not as much as Shikra because I was expecting a really good ride on this thing. Before this, my favorite B&M invert was Banshee. Banshee provided some very good positive G elements and a really nice setting. Now, what do you get when you provide even better positive Gs, an even better setting, and a longer layout? You get Montu, this incredible 90s B&M, and it is absolutely incredible. Starting off at that first drop and that first inversion, you know that this ride is going to pack an absolute punch. Compared to some of the even really good rides I've gotten on Raptor and Banshee, Montu absolutely hauls. Montu is a machine that runs as fast as possible. I don't know what they do to this ride, but it runs so fast, and this ride is extremely forceful. Every element makes you feel like your legs are about to fall off, and that Batwing, don't even get me started. That Batwing in the back row might be one of the most intense positive G elements I have ever experienced in my life. It was a very similar to experience to Skyrush's first drop, but instead of positive Gs, it's negative Gs. My legs felt like they were asleep through that entire element, and throughout the rest of the ride to a lesser extent. This ride is seriously a masterpiece coming from B&M, and probably their best coaster from the 90s. I absolutely love this thing, and I am so excited to ride it again when I come back to this park. And now, coming to another controversial opinion, my number one coaster at this park is the one and the only 2011 Intamin Blitz Cheetah Hunt. Let me tell you, people said that this was a family coaster to me, and I honestly took the bait. But let me tell you, if you ride on a good day, this thing is more than just a family ride. This thing provides some insane ejector moments and insane positive moments, as well as some great whip. But that's not what makes this ride the number one spot on the list. This ride is just pure fun. Now, when I told some of my friends that I had this ride ranked over I-305 on my list, they thought I was crazy. But I like I-305 and Cheetah Hunt for completely different reasons. If I want a balls to the wall experience, I'm gonna ride I-305. If I want a fun cruise through a safari, I'm going to ride Cheetah Hunt. Cheetah Hunt is one of the most fun rides I've ridden. And while it's not one of the most intense, it is sheer fun. And when it comes to fun factor, this thing is an absolute 10 out of 10. And it definitely has some intense elements too. I'm also a sucker for duration, and with 3 separate launches, this ride feels like it lasts forever. That being said, I don't think it is still going to hold that reign for a while. This is where I get to Iron Gwasi. My number 1 is Steel Vengeance. My number 3 is Twisted Timbers. My number 9 is Cheetah Hunt. If Iron Gwasi runs anything like those other 2 RMCs I've ridden, yeah, it's probably going to be the best coaster in the park. Not only in the park, but probably in the entire southern United States. I still think Steve looks better, but Iron Gwasi definitely holds a spot at its own. I think if I got to ride this soon, it would probably rank up in my top 3. This ride looks absolutely insane, and definitely looks to be the new king of the park once it opens in, I don't know, like 2037. Who knows when this thing's gonna open. But anyway, those are my top coasters at Busch Gardens Tampa. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. At the end of the day, I really didn't have any major complaints. This park definitely doesn't have a horrible ride, but there are some rides that definitely need improvement. Thank you all for watching, like and subscribe, and let me know how the video was. This is Cedar Flags, and I will see you all later.